Hello, everybody. It says that, let's see, it says, yeah, we got it. So it says that we're live. I'm assuming that is the case for all of us. I hope so. Welcome and thank you for tuning in and being a part of the journey, speaking favor over all of us this day. Speaking before I introduce Lindsay again, she came back on, folks. She really did. Want to send out a big healing thought to Steve Bow. He went in this morning about 6 hours ago for prostate surgery, and he is in post recovery now. And so, Steve, we are all thinking of you. We're sending you out healing energy, and expect a good report. Yeah. So. Folks, when you face those moments, those times that impact who you are, your essence in this realm, your connection point, it's no longer just theology or ideology, it's real life. So a lot of us in the tribe are facing challenges, and so we just send out love to you. And as John Lennon said, that's all we're asking is just give us some love. So it may have been the Young Rascals. Can think about it. So Lindsay, welcome back. So good to have you.
It's so good to be here. Thanks for having me back. I'm glad we can do this.
As I said before, and I put it in the description box, we could have gone on for at least 2 or 3 hours, but I go by the idiom that most people's butts go numb after about 35, 40 minutes. You really start to lose them. And then the next 20 minutes, they're really just kind of making the transition out. So anyway, we will pick up from where we left off because I had a lot of inquiries. By the way, hello, Gaza down in Australia, 4 o'clock in the morning there, Lindsay. That's dedication.
That is.
We love you, Grandpa Brian, and all the moderators. David Castle, Lost in Space. Gilbert said he's riding in the back of the bus. I promise to keep my eyes on the road. No sudden veer offs, because if you're in the last seat, it really sucks. You get the whiplash effect back there. You know what I'm saying, Lindsay? It can really be rather, if you're prone to seasickness, don't sit back there. But anyway, thank you, the moderators. Much love to you all and all the rest of you. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure, there's my number, 29. Lindsay, it's everywhere in my life. I now know what it means, but I got to tell you, for about a year or so, it really drove me nuts. But any case, thank you for hitting the like button. Make sure to subscribe to Lindsay's YouTube channel. Make sure to sign up for her on her website. That way you can know more and even ask her questions yourselves that I may not cover. So, and that's a good way of just showing simple love and respect. So that's how we hang here, Lindsay. Just
thank you.
Let you know.
I appreciate that.
Well, certainly. And thank you and welcome back. So picking up from where we left off, we were discussing shadow work. And how fortuitous that we had planned for you to come back before this inquiry came in. And it's very fortuitous that we are in a position of gaining from you the gnosis that you know. So a person wrote me and said, what is shadow work?
Yeah.
So I thought we just kick off from there and see how the river flows as we continue to go.
It's a great question. And I think there's so much, with anything we could talk about, there are nearly infinite takes on what these things are. And I like to bring things to the infinitely practical, because otherwise, what's the point, right? Where we can dive deep into the, all the philosophy and all of the theories and all of the everything. And that's great fun. And I love that. But what does it actually matter to someone's lived experience in their life in this 3D reality if they can't understand it or they can't do something about it? So I love to talk about things like this exactly because of that. I feel like you can go to all of these different places. You can find all of these different people talking about it and you can walk away going, what? Like, am I supposed to
You say,
like,
what? I
yeah,
love that.
am I supposed to do something with this? Or
Mhm.
what was the point of that?
But
And
what does this benefit my life? It's
yeah.
like, yeah, it's like, do I really need to fill up the hard drive with this?
And there's so much ego involved in it often too, where people are purposely talking about it in ways that seem like so far away and so lofty and so hard to describe and you would have to read like 25 tomes to even get to where I'm at. And it's like, well, that's also not helpful. Like, it's must be fun for you to, I guess, to have that going on as your specific play you're playing in the world. But what is it helping people? So I love the question. I love that we get to talk about it today. And the simplest answer I'll give is that shadow work is just confronting your own BS.
Mm,
Right? It's
mm,
like, this is all of us. If we were already perfectly integrated, ascended masters, we would have maybe no shadow work left to do. But we're here, right? And we're having this experience. And that means we probably have some shadow work to do. We probably have trauma that is unhealed. We probably have wounds that are unhealed. We probably have old habits that were not healthy, that were dark, and that were creating, disharmony in our body, in our systems, in our life, that we've never changed still, right? There's things that we feel like we're failing at or haven't done enough of. All of these things can fall under shadow work. And the thing that is, I think, most important to realize is that shadow work exists on the physical, it exists on the emotional, it exists on the mental, it exists on the spiritual. So all of those layers have their own shadows that you are still dealing with, working with, and healing. And they correspond to so much. We can look at, again, because it affects all of those layers, they all reflect each other. We can experience this on a spiritual level. We can experience dark entities and negative energies and things like that. And that can be a part of our shadow work, right? We can have our mindsets that we've put into little boxes and these little mind forms that we've created. That can be our shadow work, and the way that can create mental illness and other things within us. Our emotional self, right? We can have all of this emotional trauma, emotional baggage, emotional reactivity, emotional unconsciousness, and that can be our shadow work. In our physical body, we have disease, right? We have
mhm.
unhealth that we have created for ourselves, and that is our shadow work too. So it's all of these things. Hopefully
It's
that was
interesting. This has been decades ago, but in a group teaching, it was about identifying our shadow. The one thing that humans are least aware of and pay virtually no attention to is their shadow.
Mm.
And it's interesting because with our technology today, we know that even spirits can cast shadows. There is evidence of a race of being called shadow people.
Mm.
But what we're talking about here is really kind of getting into what I have found out. It's kind of like the dark night of the soul. It's that healing. It's going deep inside where a shadow doesn't see the light, but yet it's a cause and effect of the light.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you dive into any of your shadows and you go through that dark night of the soul, you are actually bringing that now into light, into full integration. And it can be painful, just like when you're doing shadow work on the physical. If you need to do like a surgery or something, recovery from that is painful. Like, it takes some time. There's some space in there that needs to be created, and it's not always easy or fun. Most shadow work is not very easy or fun. And that's why a lot of people aren't doing it and
I was
haven't been
forced
doing
into it. I had
Yeah.
2.5 years of when I was recovering from the meningitis and the Lyme disease, a double whammy. I couldn't do anything for a good year. I mean, I was in a hospital bed. It does cause you a lot of reflection, and unbeknownst to me, I wasn't really aware of what was really actually transcending there's a good word, Freudian slip for sure.
Yeah.
But what was the transitioning that was taken within myself? I mean, when you basically can't get up, you're immobilized in that aspect. This isn't.
Yeah, and this is why a lot of times, again, we look at those multiple layers. By the time you're healing on the physical, you missed the boat on the spiritual, you missed it on the mental, you missed it on the emotional, and now this is the last time. Okay, you're gonna face this. We're gonna make you like you can't actually run. And this is part of what a lot of what I do in working with people. If we do soul retrieval or past life healing, that's why. It's because you can't run. You can't cut this out and drop it and just leave it behind. That is not how things work. Matter can be neither created nor destroyed. Consciousness can be neither created nor destroyed. You don't get to take part of your consciousness and put it somewhere else. For a time, it's a trick you can pull on yourself. But at some point, it has to come back and reintegrate. So, do you want to do it sooner? Or you want to do it later? Later is usually harder. By the time you're laid up with Lyme disease and whatever else, like that's pretty difficult. If you can catch it much sooner, it's way better to do.
It's interesting because at that time it was the meningitis that kicked my ass. I think the Lyme disease was nothing. It was the meningitis. But the aspect though of, you said the word soul retrieval. Now you and I hadn't talked, and in my notes, because I spent a little time in meditating and seeing what things, the word soul retrieval came to me, and I actually wrote it down.
Huh.
So it's interesting. So the angelics or the spirit guides are wanting to bring out something here. So soul retrieval. So let's connect the dots then. So we have this shadow work, which, is basically, I see it as a 5-point pentacle. Mm-hmm. But then you have this thing that really what's taking place is soul work. Mm-hmm. And then the question then becomes, well, then what would be the purpose for soul retrieval? Because the word itself implies something lost, something taken away.
Yeah. Well, it's just like we just said, right? You can play this trick on yourself, right? Where you're like, okay, in time and space, like here's where I'm cutting off.
Maybe that's why we like this realm.
Maybe.
Because in the spirit realm, it's hard to hide.
Right. In the spirit realm, it's still there. You're just, your consciousness is refusing to acknowledge it. And when was the point in linear space time where you chose to start the disconnection in your consciousness, where you refuse to see that, right? That's where you started the disease in yourself. That's where the shadow appeared, so to speak. And people all the time are like, why is this, demon attacking me? Or why is this disease suddenly happening to me? Or why is this thing? And this is one of the hard truths that, most people don't want to acknowledge or hear is like, well, you did that to yourself, actually. You chose that. You didn't maybe know the consequences of your choice fully in this 3D reality, but you did choose it. And this is what is happening to you. So at the point at which you chose rejection, and we see this in trauma, if you want to bring it to this more clinical, maybe easier for people to understand sort of way, we see it the same thing in trauma. In trauma, in the moment, we said, nope, that's not happening to me. And we created a new personality, or we created a fractured memory that didn't integrate correctly. And now we have PTSD, right? Or we created a denial of self, basically. We said, nope, I'm not that. This didn't happen to me. I refuse to accept it. I refuse to live through it. Well, you can't. You did. But in your consciousness,
the only way you're going to conquer it.
Right.
Yeah, it's the only way. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So, but in your consciousness, you said no. And so you refuse to accept it. So it didn't go anywhere. You didn't not experience it. You can't just wish it away. Right. So you actually have to, and you have to do this in therapy. If you had trauma and you went to therapy, you experienced some form of this, or we do it on the spiritual as this with this shamanic tools that I've had or other that people have that we can help people with. It's all the same process actually. And it's going back, finding that piece that was rejected and bringing it back into full consciousness and integration. I got chills.
So it brings the question then to the forefront. And you alluded to it in a previous statement, was saying that we can find the physical aspect because the body is a spirit within itself. It's going to heal itself if it's given the right conditions into that. And even sometimes in adverse environments, these are remarkable. Wow, I say engineering, but they're beyond that. Yeah. They're, the fact that they're living, they can do remarkable things in healing. However, and it should be brought out. So I can heal my physical body, but if my spirit is broken, and I believe in most childhood trauma, I lived it. And you have to face it. You have to conquer it and realize that you were never just in this thing as a mere victim.
Mm-hmm.
You can't take that approach. You were involved in circumstances that you may not have had control over. But as I can look back, and as a child, and I'm right there now. I love this child, and he's not afraid anymore.
Yeah.
You know, he can look at those who are inflicting the pain and see compassion.
Mm-hmm.
It's not fear.
Yeah.
And the point is, though, most people don't realize that if your soul is sick, if your soul is broken, we call it soul sickness, that this is where the shadow work gets really intense.
Yes.
Because that's not a fun place to be.
No.
No.
It's not. And it's often terrifying. And you know, that dark night of the soul place, like we were referring to earlier, is probably one of the hardest things that you can ever go through. I think it's harder than the physical healing. It's harder than the mental. It's harder than the emotional.
It's more painful than physical.
It's more painful, and it often involves all the rest of them. And you know, this is the thing too, that people, and sometimes it kind of goes around through the meme world and through the different places you can go find the sort of spiritual types of people, and their conversations are having, is this meme of like, okay, I mean, you can choose enlightenment, you can choose to step into the light, but like, it's not this sunny, fluffy, furry bunny, like, you know, day necessarily. You probably have to go through the dark night of the soul. And when people are asking for that, I don't know that they always know that that's what they're asking for. Because again, if you were just there already, you would be a very different person. So what is it between you and there? Because part of you is there. Part of you is ascended or purified or enlightened or whatever you want to call that, right? So what is blocking your lived experience from that? It's all that shadow. It's all those wounds. It's all that trauma. It's all the misconceptions. It's all these things you've created and gathered over who knows how many lifetimes. It's not a bad thing. That's what we're here to do. That's part of the process, right? Is choosing, getting free will to choose whatever you want, and then seeing the consequences play out, and having then the power and the choice to heal it and go back to, or rather rise up within our actual self. Right. So that's another part, again, where people don't want to usually hear that or understand it or accept it, that we did all of this to ourselves. When you said we were in this experience of trauma where we didn't have control, that felt very true at the time. But later you went back to that space and you released all the pain and you healed all the trauma and you found forgiveness and compassion. You rose up to a higher level. Well, doesn't that prove then that you do have actually control? You didn't think you did then.
If I hadn't gone through the experience, then I would not have been able to master the fact. And it was so intense that in this case with, you know, my father, it was the fact it brought healing to him. It brought deliverance to him in not the physical aspect, but it was his soul. Now, so yeah, you know, one can say, well, you've mastered. Yeah. But you have to understand that if I hadn't gone through the test, and that's how I look at it, it was this, you know, my eternal spirit being is one that has this joy. And, you know, even in the midst of traumatic trauma, when you can actually see it through the compassion of eyes from a different perspective, because what it turned out in this case for my father was that he was hurting from something that I never knew about, was that he felt responsible for his mom's death. And being the firstborn, he had anger, and that anger was directed at me. So it's a lot of dynamics that are involved in this. So
yeah, well, and that's so powerful, you know, and people will not even understand sometimes, like, well, why even bother like forgiving or whatever? And it's because you are tied up in that too. If you are if you want to actually heal yourself and release that and move forward in life, you have to find that forgiveness, compassion. So then you have to actually understand where it came from. And there's a part of you that chose this so that you could do that really fully, not just by reading it in a textbook or someone telling, some other soul told you that, oh, this is the way it is, but you lived it. Now you know that gnosis cannot be undone, right? That's the point of gnosis, is you know it now. No one could tell me otherwise. No one could tell you otherwise.
No, no, listen, I'm back in first grade where I turned in my handwriting, and I got the gold star. It's like, yeah, baby, I got the gold star. I mean, you go through it, and that is how you find that healing for yourself. It's amazing when you see the transformation, and that's when those shadows begin to dissipate.
Yep.
Because they're not there anymore. It's like, and it's kind of interesting because I equate it to the fact that there is this inner light within myself, and within that light there can be no shadow.
That's the truth.
Would that be true? I mean, and from a clinical aspect of it, is it the same process that you see as well?
Yeah. I mean, again, you go back literally to that time, right? And for me, let's say one of the times was when I was tortured by this dentist, right? And I literally go back to that. Yeah, it's horrifying, right?
Now that's horrifying. What I went through was nothing compared to that.
It's all relative.
It's all relative. I get it.
In the moment itself, like my little body found a way to deal with it. And part of that was by fracturing and rejecting a lot of it and disassociating from the body. And that's a skill that is actually really handy sometimes. Like there's a reason humans can do this, right? But then I did have to go back and reintegrate that so that I didn't continue to live it out for the rest of time. But when you go back again, part of what at first you go back and you're just horrified. You're in the same spot you were back then. You're terrified. It's painful. It's why is this happening? It's rejection. It's everything. And you just have to stay with that. And then sometimes that takes multiple times of going back. So in a therapy setting, right, it might be multiple times of going back to that and really living it and really experiencing it. Sometimes on a spiritual setting, it only does take the one time of the soul retrieval itself, and it really is reintegrated and done. But either way, you're doing the same process. You're going back, you're getting that energy, and instead of rejecting it, you're really living through it. That's so empowering. Again, you realize you didn't ever not have control. In fact, you had full control and full consciousness and full choice and full ability the whole time. You did not have control over this other person. That's true. You never had control over that, and you never will. But it's so empowering to realize how much power and control you have in yourself. If I were to face another situation where someone was in any way trying to be like that, I would have much more ability to control myself in that situation, to make a different situation for myself, to never get into that spot in the first place or to exit it or whatever. That's empowering too. So I know that this ripples out on every level of my experience and being to heal that. So I'm empowered by going back to it. I'm empowered by really sitting with it and feeling it. I'm empowered by forgiving and releasing that person. I'm empowered by realizing just how much control and power I do have. And then I'm empowered to never experience this again, if that's what I choose. And we could instead, I could sit in the victimhood and I could say, man, I was 4 years old. Why would you do this? How did my mom let this happen? How did my siblings not? How did this dentist even? With the attendant, how did she just watch this happen? Like, I could do all of that forever and nothing would change. And I would just be disempowered. I would be living in a lie. I would not be in that light in my center.
I think you'd become trapped.
You're literally trapped by it. Yes.
Literally.
You have no power over that. It just, PTSD is like the ultimate expression of this powerlessness, right? In a moment right now, if I haven't healed that and some scent of dentistry floats to my nose, I might go through the whole experience again without wanting to, right? That's what a trigger is. That's no control, but you do have control. You do have that power. And so it is really difficult, but it's really beautiful to go back and heal these old shadows and do actual shadow work in this lived experience of right now. And for the rest of time, I have a more beautiful experience that is more true, because the truth was I was always in that light and I was always in control.
And where it concluded for myself personally was on my father's passing, I was pulled into the astral, and you'll experience this, folks. You really will. If you really, for me, the question was brought for me, and I was actually in this circle, and I couldn't see where the voice, but it says, did I have a charge against my dad?
Hmm.
Now I could see his astral form. And I told them I have no charge at all. It allowed him to pass through.
Yeah. Ooh, got chills.
Yeah. And it's so vitally important. Someone else needs to hear this, because a lot of times that's where these injuries that we carry, these traumas that we don't want to fully recognize, what we don't understand is there's an extension because it's associated with someone else. Now, in this case, where it was my father's passing, I realized then there are many souls that are trapped because they can't get that forgiveness from either the one that they injured or whatever the circumstance may be.
Yeah.
So this is where the soul retrieval, I think, in my personal experience, becomes vitally important, and it's not taught.
No.
The act of unforgiveness is an act. It is a choice of free will.
Yeah.
Now, you can get empowerment from unforgiveness. It will breed disdain. It has a whole associated symptomologies about it. But what I'm trying to tell someone needs to hear this is the fact that you may be that gatekeeper.
Yeah. That's a really good point. It's a really good point. You know, and the forgiveness. So I do forgiveness practice really frequently, and I didn't understand the power of it until just a few years ago. I do it every day. But a few years ago, I started doing it daily because I had gone through a lot of different types of forgiveness practices and different understandings that forgiveness is really for you too,
It is.
right? Like you need to release that.
It
too.
is the key.
Right. So there's like a selfish part of it too, which I tapped into first, actually. But then I understood the more I did this, just how powerful it can be to really deeply do forgiveness as a practice, and to release people from anything that you've ever held against them, and how healing it can be for you, but for them too. And so part of what you're talking about, this trap that you could be making for them, that could be holding them literally on a soul level from being able to pass forward and go on their own journey and heal and grow and bring their light to everyone who needs it, which is everyone. You know, you could be doing that for them. And so you want to do this even more deeply too, and more regularly, perhaps this forgiveness practice. But a piece that became really interesting to me is watching on the soul level as I give forgiveness to people, some of them won't take it. They don't feel like they deserve it. And that is so painful to watch. So part of my forgiveness practice has become, please accept my forgiveness, not just let me give you forgiveness, but please take it. Has to go both ways. You have to both give it and they have to receive it.
It's an offering, but an offering can be rejected.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
well, that's a karmatic trap that, you talk about a true conundrum.
Yeah.
And as you were talking, Lindsay, I was seeing mentally that this can become generational.
Yes, I was just going to say.
See, you and I are get out of my head, man.
We just understand because we've lived it, and we have that connection to it. Then, so I was just to say, people will come into life. So like a mother will come in and birth this child, and the child will, they'll spend their whole life like trying to help the child like just receive healing and wellness, and it looks very codependent. And we're like, wow, why are you guys doing this? Well, this is part of why is they haven't released this from each other, and how many lives, who knows at this point. It can be anything. It can be friend, cousin, whatever, it doesn't matter. But that's just one example that probably people can look at and see like, oh yeah, there are souls that just seem like this one follows that one around trying to get them to heal themselves. Please take the forgiveness.
and they won't. I mean, I speak in case of my mother. I never knew my mother. And the short period of time I did was an interesting adventure. And it's interesting because as I look at it now, from my perspective at where I am at life, and, that she has passed over, I did the same thing for her. And there was such gratitude. The point is that as a mother is giving birth to this child and she's carried this child, that transference of what that is of her pain, a lot of that is many times attached to the new soul coming in.
Yeah. This is another big piece of shadow
I
work.
mean, this is like, so how do I deal with that? You know, it's like, yeah.
Well, it's ancestral. Yeah. When we talk
Yeah.
about ancestral healing and people are saying like, I'm healing the wounds of my ancestors, like they're not joking. Well, you are. There's a way that source and spirit has figured out how to do this in a very compact way, though. You find that the things you're healing for you are the things you're healing for your ancestors, right? The stuff that you're releasing for you is the stuff that your ancestors are releasing. There's a reason you came in with this, and maybe we touched on it last time, but I've been understanding it more and more as I help people heal. I see on the spiritual level, like sort of how that looks for them. And it's like you come in with this like chunk of a certain aspect of karma that you're healing for, kind of for everyone almost, right? That is the ancestral healing. You're like, okay, you know, so for me specifically in this life, a piece of that is this torture, right? Choosing to torture other beings. That's something I've been trying to heal and working on healing on my ancestral line and in my own past lives for how many lives now, right? So that's another way of looking at it, in a way, is this higher level of shadow work that is collective and that is ancestral. But you
Ancestral.
Wow. Yeah. But you've brought it into the micro, into the immediate, into the this one life sort of fractal.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, this gets into the whole thing because there are certain cultures, Native American culture, going all the way down into some of even the Amazonian cultures, Mayan, the Day of the Dead, is that the intercession for the dead, that we, the living, have the power to actually many times bridge the gap that allows our ancestors to not only cross over, but then to rid the karmatic debt that is associated with the bloodline. Now, we don't do this in America, in Western culture.
Nope.
No. And
no, the closest we come is to our materialist scientists have, you know, begun to understand epigenetics. That's as close as we get. Is they're like, yeah, it turns out that the traumas of your ancestors actually live in your genes. Like, okay,
imagine that.
Look at it, yeah.
But it really gets into, and I'm going to really look into this more, because I wonder, you see, I'm becoming more and more convinced that the position so many of us have is far more powerful. I think many of us are going to kick ourselves in the butt when we cross over and just realize just how powerful we were.
Yes. That's my whole mission, is to just get people to understand like how powerful you are. Because people will look at you, Wayne, or me, and they'll say, oh, you're, I don't know, special or gifted, or you understand more. But no, you are that. The reason you like that in me, whatever it is you're seeing, is because you are that too. And you like that about you. And that's beautiful. We are all this. And I could list all my mistakes for you and you go, oh, you're not very special. Like, no, I'm not. I'm just someone who so happens to have understood enough to be able to talk about it, I guess, or help others heal the same types of things and in similar ways. But we all have this, and we all, you know, when we're talking about healing ourselves and how it connects to our ancestors and how it can be this collective thing that we're actually healing, and we're literally releasing the karma from that, all these souls are being brightened and lightened and uplifted because we are healing ourselves and choosing to bring that to others or release others. That is so powerful and empowering. But really think about what you're saying there. Right? What you're saying there is the same thing that all the masters have always been trying to tell us, which is that when you heal yourself, you heal the world. People are constantly saying, what do we do about the state of the world? It's crazy. Look how dark it is. You don't control that, but you control this. And it turns out that when you heal this, you literally heal all of that. It's literal. It's not a fancy, nice little like thing that just feels good. Like that is literally what's happening.
Lindsay, so let's make, I got 2 points to make. Number one, spot on. Two, sadly, it's very obvious that the vast majority of humanity hasn't figured it out. And as you were talking again, I saw deeply in my spirit is the fact that there are so many listening to our conversation, and you and I are included in that. We are indeed the key masters. We are the ones that there are, wow, I'm getting this. There is a host of witnesses in your family that are begging you to please release the power that you have, enable that healing, that forgiveness, bring this to an end so that you can free them. But more importantly, you've just made your path.
There's one of my favorite quotes. Oh, I'm going to butcher it. It's in my book, Sine Curve of Aeons, Vitalis. Is each of the sections has a quote that basically is the same idea that we're talking about. When you heal yourself, you heal the world. But one of my favorite ones is when you unleash all that is within you, your angels, cry with joy, like, thank God you did it, because it's already there. You just unleash it, right? You just choose to sit with it. You just choose to do that shadow work, and it just is there. And when you do not release what is within you, I mean, the whole world dies. Like, this is as within, so without, right? The Hermeticists were telling us all along, all the masters, all the traditions, they all have their version of this exact same, precept, is that you are actually connected to everything.
It brings it to a personal, there we go, the key.
This book also
yes,
will share those same messages.
And that's what I keep seeing, is that so many of us hold the key, but we don't know where to put the key. And it can be a daunting task. And wow, so many give up because they find that they can't fulfill the task. And that's that forgiveness, Lindsay, that you're talking about.
Yeah, it should go within too. I forgive me. Right. We were saying those souls that are like, no, I don't want your forgiveness. I don't deserve it. Like, you might be doing that a little yourself too.
Oh.
Like, I don't accept forgiveness. I don't forgive myself. So
do you want me to give you a test, Lindsay, that you can use on others to see if because many people will say, I don't have that problem. Yeah, let me tell you, because I'm guilty of this. And I still deal with it. You see, I love giving, but it's very difficult for me to receive.
And when on that one for a while,
I'm just, this is where we just get real honest. And the thing is why? Where's that rooted at? Well, it's rooted is because I still apparently have something somewhere that still feels I'm not quite worthy. I'm not quite. I don't deserve this. I mean, I don't want pride to enter. And I can make a whole host of excuses. Wow. I have to send you a check for this, the therapy.
Therapy for
on behalf of everybody.
This is why this is my favorite way to do forgiveness practice, is I go in, I call all the souls forward that I might want to do forgiveness practice with. It could be a specific person, or it can be, a whole group of people. You could just say anyone who I've ever tortured in any way, right? In any lifetime, come forward. All my ancestors, all your ancestors, everybody come in, let's do this. Me and my ancestors forgive you and all your ancestors. Please accept our forgiveness. And I go through every lifetime and every thought, speech, mind, body, any way we've hurt you, big, little, small, conscious or unconscious, all of it. We're so sorry. Please forgive us. Please forgive us. And then we forgive you. Please accept our forgiveness. So we accept your forgiveness. You accept our forgiveness. But then let's also add two more components, right? And one is heaven, source, whatever you call, spirit, soul, ether, chi, like all of that good, beautiful, and true energy forgave us before we ever did a thing, knew we were going to make mistakes and forgave us anyway, like that. So feel it, right? And bring it into your soul, heart, mind, and body, and then forgive yourself and invite all the souls here, all of us, let's forgive ourselves and bring it into your soul, heart, mind, and body and really feel that. So it's like a 4-part process, right? I forgive, I'm forgiven, I accept that Source never held anything as he never could, never would, and that I forgive myself too. Because those are all the dimensions that we really need to release, really need to accept from, receive from those of us who are it's hard for us to receive, right? And also to give and release from.
Lindsay, I mean, you see, we're talking, so obviously I'm picking this up. It seems that there is an obstacle that is in front of many people in this receiving, And it comes down to this thing called judgment.
Yeah.
That the problem with, mainstream religion is that the fact that the religion itself can't exist unless there's the guilt factor.
Guilt and shame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, those are two huge mountains that most people, I have to tell you, there was at one point in my life, I probably had thought I couldn't overcome those.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Leaving teaching was actually my biggest test, right? Because I had to recognize that part of why it was so hard for me to leave was this guilt, this shame. If I'm not here, who will save these poor children? Right? If I don't do this, and who am I if I abandon them? I'm a horrible person. Guilt and shame, guilt and shame, guilt and shame. And then I finally realized, like, what have I ever given to me though? I've spent my whole life giving my mind, soul, heart, and body to all these kids, which are beautiful and I loved. I don't regret it, right? But it was coming from a place of guilt and shame. Nobody wants guilty, shameful energy from you. I don't want it either. And so I really had to release that whole entire career path and go on this journey, which was really about just healing my guilt and my shame and releasing it and going, I am worthy. I'm worthy of everything. I'm worthy of love. I'm worthy of rest. I'm worthy of healing. I'm worthy of receiving. I'm worthy of the highest, best, biggest amounts of this. And since then, that's been most of what I'm doing is just acknowledging and building and accepting and speaking aloud my worth, and that I am this, and I can do this, and I do this, and I deserve this, and accepting that when people give it to me, and in fact demanding it from some other people. That's another part of that journey. Saying like, oh no, you will give me this, actually. I am worth this, and I will not accept less than this. And all the way around that circle, just to heal this initial wound, wherever it was, of this guilt and this shame and this feeling of unworth. It motivates a lot of healers, actually, right? A lot of healers have this, and this is why a lot of healers will wear themselves out. But that's what I was doing with teaching, is I was just wearing myself. I was giving so much and so incapable of receiving and so incapable of releasing myself from the desperate need to give and to heal others and to help others. That was just ripping me apart mentally, emotionally, and now finally it was physical, and I was facing these huge physical challenges, all of them rooted in this same thing, which is another way of looking at that. This is on all levels, right? If you don't heal it at the soul, you don't heal it at the mental, you don't heal it at the emotional, it's gonna rip your body apart. Now you're gonna have to really deal with it or die. Your choice.
And as you were talking, just amazing what happens in here, because it carries over. It's why people get old.
Yes.
In fact, doctors will tell you, people that have arthritic conditions, other type of rheumatoid, bone type of diseases, it's rooted, if all things, in unforgiveness. In fact, the book of Proverbs says that unforgiveness is bitterness to the bones.
Not an accident.
That goes 4,000 years back, that they knew back then that if you carried unforgiveness, that if you carried around this resentment, that what it will do is literally suck the marrow, the essence of your life and your bones, and then you're left with arthritis. I don't suffer from that. My wife used to. So there's healing. Someone needs to hear this again. Yeah. And this also leads to other ailments, for instance, with the digestive system. You're getting because this is true, isn't it, Lindsay?
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, it's reminding me, I just got this book. I've been looking for this book. I found this book like 20 years ago, and I used it, and then I lost it, and I couldn't remember what it was called or who wrote it. And so
that's truly losing it.
Yeah. And then I just had this beautiful person on my show, and he said, oh, you need this book by Louise Hay, and it's called Heal Your Body. And this is actually a very condensed version of it, which I'm so happy. I'm really into very short books lately because I like things to be condensed, but you can look up anything and she'll tell you, is it
look
conjunctivitis? well, here's the root issue, right? Anger and frustration at what you were looking at in life. And here's the mantra that you can use to help heal yourself from that. I see with eyes of love, there is a harmonious solution and I accept it now. And even if you didn't do the mantra part, right, you could at least look and see like, okay, well, if I'm having like liver problems, what is that stemming from? And now you can do some self-therapy. Okay, well, let's say it's anger. Okay, well, where is my anger? When do I get angry? Okay, I get angry in these situations. What do those have in common? Oh, it turns out they have in common this feeling like I'm not going to be in control. I'm not going to be able to control things. And so then it's actually fear. And so where does that come from? Where's the first time in my life I can trace back to this moment where I had that? It's a trauma always, right? It didn't maybe seem like a trauma at the moment, but it always is. And you
What's
can
the
go
name of
back.
the book? People are asking again.
Louise Hay is the author.
Heal Your Body.
She's very famous, actually. And this is Heal Your Body. And I don't know anything about her. I just know that she's kind of famous in the spiritual, metaphysical sort of communities, I guess, because she did this so long ago. And I think Hay House, the publishing company, is actually hers. But it's beautiful. So anytime I'm dealing with something now, I can go back to this and say, okay, well, it's this. And then I write the mantra out every morning and night. I say the mantra to myself. But more importantly, I dive into the feelings and the attitudes of the mantra and of the problem. And I see like, where in my life did this stem from and where is it repeating? And so I can see the pattern and I can start to understand my own emotional orientation that created this problem. So then because this is the real key, is it'll come back up again in our lived life and it'll say, here I am. And instead of reacting the way I always have and having those same emotional cycles, I can go, oh, here's this opportunity. I'm going to release that anger. I'm going to release that fear that I'm not in control. I'm going to choose instead to act this way, which reinforces the pattern, the new pattern that I have released this and that I don't live that way anymore. And I am choosing instead to be in my light. Not a rejection, right? I'm not pretending. I'm not saying I am not angry. Well, yeah, I am. I'm saying I understand the anger and I allow it and I love it and I release it and I see the root of it and I understand what I'm actually trying to do. And so I'm going to do that instead. It's an honoring of yourself, right? Instead of a rejection, and accepting of yourself rather than that rejection. That rejection will lead right back to the disease, right back to the cycle, right back to the reinforcement of the, right? All disease is this disconnection we talked about. That's what creates the shadow. And you can't have that. You can't live with that. So instead, I'm choosing to dive into the shadow, love it, accept it, and integrate it, and choose to go forward in the light.
And and someone is getting the word frustration. So that frustration is really the symptom of quite a few other things. Anger primarily. There was a time. Whereas the group Sticks, such an angry young man. And I was an angry young man. There was frustration in everything it seemed. And the thing about it is the more frustrated you get, the more frustrating things become.
Yeah. Right.
It's true, isn't it? I mean, I don't know. Is it just me?
No, my little helpers and guides and allies will do this to me on purpose. And I spend a lot of time getting mad about it. They'll like throw something in my face, literally like a stick or something, will like hit me in the face, and I'll be like, ah, and then like my hair will fall down and my hair will like be in my face and I'll be like, ah, and then like my something else and I'm like, ah, and I'm like, oh, okay. I thought
it was just me. I mean,
you're being invited to practice, right? There's always going to be a corresponding real life experience. That was a silly one, right? But like, there's going to be things that come up that give you the opportunity to prove it to yourself. I really am choosing to heal this now. I'm going to do it like this instead this time. Otherwise, you're not integrating it really. It's all mental, or it's all just kind of emotional, which is good. You need those parts too, but you have to do it. You have to live it.
I had a basically, my own trial, so to speak, because I had to get down to the thing. All right. So if I dislike myself because of this, or that, well, then why? Where is that? Where is that stemming from? Was that something that I did to overcompensate for the feeling of unworthiness through the abuse cycle that you because as the book of Proverbs says again, it says, be careful not to break the spirit of a child. Because if you break the spirit of a child, that's a broken spirit. That most likely that individual is going to go through life broken. And it's going to break other people's lives because it's the only thing it knows.
Yeah.
Boy, holy crap. And you think about this, Lindsay, that gets back into, again, the deepness of the shadow work on a lot of this, because many of this is stemmed from that childhood introduction.
Yeah. Well, and you look at, aside from just the pure grace of God, you know, what can help that broken soul heal? Only a healed soul. Well, how many souls do you look around and see are pretty healed? There's not a lot of them, it seems like, right? And so this is, again, goes back to that desperate importance of you healing yourself. It is what you can do. It's the only thing you can do. You cannot heal others. But if you're going to ever hope to invite others towards their own healing, you can only do it from that space. So there's one more way you can look at it, as you healing you is also you healing the world. If we can look at that from so many directions and see how true it is.
And if you can't forgive yourself, then you cannot forgive others. And I'm getting down to, there was an incident of a younger person, a lot of anger. And because I had been there, and I remember when I finally got, where we just hugged, and that release, when that spirit within this young human being, because of the things that and it was just as traumatic for them as, may not have been as intense or mine, but it was trauma.
Yeah.
And to see that moment of healing, and I just remember the person just saying, I hate myself. I hate myself. And I said, but you don't understand. You are the only one that can love yourself. Yeah. And in tears, the person said, I don't know how. Mm-hmm. And then began to tell us about their home life, that, it was really devoid of love. Mm-hmm. And that young human being was absolutely being honest. That spirit really had forgotten what love really meant. Yeah. So.
Oh, I relate deeply to that. I also went through a period of time where nope, love doesn't even exist. Love doesn't exist. Yeah. God doesn't exist. If God exists, I hate God. And there's no such thing as love. There's just people lying to each other because it feels good in this empty universe. Like totally was there, did not have any ability to love myself. People would give me a compliment and I would tell them to F off. I'd be like, you look nice today, Lindsay. And I'd be like, like, whoa, that's where I was.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah. I was like, hey, I guess I won't talk to you then. So I really relate to that, but you had that ability to stand with that person without judgment, without this thing that people do too, where they're like, I need to fix this. How do I fix this? Here's this. Are any of those going to fix this? Like, that's not what heals people, right? It's just standing with them without judgment in any way and holding that love for them that they're not holding for themselves. Just be doing that is enough to them to slowly, okay, now I can start bringing out my own shadow, right? And that's what that person did. Here's this and this and this and my shadow, look at it. And you can look at it with them and go, yeah, that's dark. Right? I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to pretend. And I'm not going to put this Band-Aid on it and go, okay, everything's better now. Just going to sit with you in this. It just takes time and presence and love. And so many people, again, aren't healed enough in themselves to do that. So the fact that you could do that is so beautiful.
It drains you.
Yeah.
But that's what we're supposed to do. It's Lindsay, it's a transmutation of energy. Yeah. And if love is a power, a form of energy within itself, it can transmute that which would be the antithesis of it. Anything, in fact. Yeah.
See, this is part of that thing we're talking about too, where we say like, well, you can't disconnect from yourself. Actually, you can't actually have a soul that's actually shattered or separate. You can't cut consciousness out and leave it somewhere. And it's true in this too. You can't actually be without love. You can't actually be anything but love. So this all, again, what you're saying earlier, like it's just a trick we can play on ourselves, right? And it's this trick we think oh yeah, I totally did it. But just like the magician, like actually had the quarter in their finger, not behind your ear, right? It was all misdirection. And this is what we're doing in general here, is we're like, oh, I'm not God. I'm not divine love. I'm Lindsay. I'm in this shape and I do these things. That's all an illusion too. And in the end, what we'll really, really remember and realize is, oh, I was that all along. These were all just a series of tricks I played on myself to see. But cool, because we're, again, that gnosis. No one could tell the original soul any of these things. We had to actually experience it to know it for sure. And then we chose to do that so that we really do know. We know nothing could change the knowing.
This, and as you were talking, I was pulled back in my spirit in the movie Joe versus the Volcano, because Meg Ryan plays 3 different roles in that. She plays 2 of the sisters, and one of the sisters that she plays is exactly this, was the fact that she was searching for this, but it was the bitterness within her, the resentment to her father, that was the hindrance. There was no release in there. Folks, I tell you what, this has been probably one of the most intense, I think, examples of what therapy is really about, Lindsay. I just got to say high five to you. This has been absolutely phenomenal, my dear.
Oh, I'm so grateful. That's my whole goal, is to demystify these things for people so they really see like how personal it is, and not easy, but simple.
No, it's never easy, but as with so many things, even getting to affirmations to materialization for individual needs, there's no easy shortcut. It all requires effort. It requires work. And to be candid with you, dedication.
And sometimes, again, a lot of pain. People will ask me like, but when I
do
this,
talk about the pain.
Yeah. When people are like, because we'll be talking with their guides and things will come through, and I'll be like, well, here's a practice for you that your guides would like you to do. And they come back later and they're like, well, I did that, but I just cried. I just cried over and over again every time I tried. I'm like, yeah, that's good. That's good stuff. Like, that's why they gave you that practice, is to let that out. They're like, well, I don't want to just cry all the time. I mean, nobody wants to cry all the time, but if that's what's within you, it's got to come out.
I cry laughing.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's good therapy. It really is. Therapy. And my wife and I were talking about this some time ago, that, as she says, a good cry does the soul well.
Yes.
So
we can bring this back to the material too. Your tears, when you're crying, they'll test it, and it's full of stress hormone. You're literally releasing that physically out of you. So and emotionally and mentally and spiritually, it's happening on all levels. So there is a purpose to crying. It is a good thing.
And if you're into occult magic, tears are very, very powerful. If you can collect tears that have the essence of whether you were laughing, crying, that carries over, but that's in a whole nother subject. But
well, let's get the laughing tears instead.
Yeah, the laughing tears are fun. And that, again, laughter doeth the heart is a good medicine. And I laugh. And again, Lynn, it makes her laugh because, you get to that point where those tears come because those are tears of joy. And depending on if you have certain beliefs, the gods really cherish those tears.
Well, I'll add this too. When I'm doing my own shadow work throughout the course of my life and healing from these deep traumas and releasing these things and actually transforming them, people around you start to notice. And they say, well, something's changed or something's different. You're still you still have the same general personality and disposition, but something's different. And one of the things people noticed that had changed when I first just started doing really deep shadow work, so they're like, you laugh a lot more now. And I thought about it. I was like, I do. I always had the reaction, but I didn't always have the ability and the emotional presence to express it. And now I can laugh really easily. I smile. I've probably been smiling this whole interview. That also, someone's like, you smile a lot more now. I'm like, So these are things like, your shadow work is working when you and other people can recognize actual lived experience changes, right? You rest more now, you relax more now, you laugh more now, those types of things. Now you know that you've actually succeeded in your shadow work.
I had a person in business, and he hated me. He says, and this is an exact quote, "Why the hell are you always so goddamn happy?" He says, "I know when he says you're coming in," he says it physically bothered him, you know? So anyway,
his vibration was like, I could be that, but I'm terrified and I don't know how, so I'm going to reject
I think it was true. I never had the chance to really talk to him on that level, because it was just, again, it was this, the energy was just, it's not going to happen.
No.
Lindsay, thank you. Can you, if you ever want to come back on again, this is, and I am just reading some of the comments in the chat room. You've helped a lot of this show has helped a lot of people. I mean, holy cow, Batman.
Well, wow. Thank you for hosting and for bringing it out and sharing it with people. It's beautiful.
Well, Lindsay, thank you. I want you back on. I mean, this is where, unless this work is done, it's impossible, particularly where, in my case, where esoteric studies are concerned, occultism. You see, if you bring this brokenness into your magic's going to be broken.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
It's just a fact.
Same with everything you do is going to be tainted by it.
Yeah.
Right.
So you got to make an appointment with Lindsay. Get on there, because you do remote therapy classes. Yeah. So folks, if you know someone who could benefit of this as well, the contact information is below. Get in touch with her, because the sooner that the healing process starts, the sooner it will begin. And then that opens up just a plethora of opportunity that I'll say this, the spirits will uphold you even more. You see, they can see the contriteness of a soul. Mm-hmm. They can also see one that's healed. Mm-hmm. And they like that kind of stuff. So that's all I'm saying. Lindsay, you want to say something before we go?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be here. And if people do want to hook up with me, like you said, it's virtual. So I do readings, I do guidance sessions. We can connect with your spiritual guides and allies, get messages through for you, and all kinds of other stuff. So you can go to rogueways.org to do that. I also have my show. I would love it if people come and subscribe on YouTube or on Rockfin. Yeah, rockfin.com/rogueways. And I love releasing our conversations also on my podcast version of the show, because you're so gracious to allow that. And then people get to come to know you better, because you're such an amazing soul yourself, have done so much and brings people so much good content. So I love that as well. And it's so it's just a pleasure and an honor to be here with you. And I would love if people who have enjoyed this conversation want to go grab The Key of Transformational Healing, because this is a book that I was lucky enough to channel through from our spiritual ancestors. And it is reflective of a lot of what we talked about today specifically, and maybe even a little deeper in some of the different aspects. And so you can buy it anywhere on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or whatever you like. But also, if you buy it from my site at rogueways.org, you get a little inscription, and it's also a little channeled hello to you from your guides and allies. So that's always a nice perk as well. I have lots of other books, but that's the most recent and the most relevant to this conversation.
Far out. I'm going to do that. I mean, yeah. Listen, I opened, it's like this. The ethereal realm is vast. And if someone wants to drop me a little note through another person, I'm open for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's like, I've been there, and folks, you're going to get there. You're going to get in the chamber, the big room where it's amazing. But yeah, it's like, here I am. Lindsay, thank you, my dear. And stay with me as we get going. And thank you, everyone. We went a little bit over, but much love to you all. Make sure to like the button and make sure to support Lindsay and her work. This is what we can do to show her thank you, because this previous hour, share it. There was more healing, and if you will just go back and listen, wow, you're going to have the penguin walk. That's happy feet. So, all right. It's like, all right. Have a great one, folks. We'll see you tomorrow.